Kim Ju-chan had walked through gunfire without flinching. But when a maid in a white apron smiled at him across a marble ballroom, his entire world stopped, and 40 models held their breath. This is the story of how Korea's most feared crime lord lost control of his empire, because of a woman who was never supposed to exist in his world. A woman whose smile held a secret that would either save him or destroy everything he'd built in blood. Seoul, 2024, where skyscrapers cast shadows long enough to hide entire criminal empires. Kim Ju-chan controlled 6 districts from a penthouse office that overlooked the Han River. They called him the Frozen King, not because he was cold, though he was, but because for 15 years, no one had ever seen him break, not when rivals came for his territory, not when prosecutors came for his freedom, not even when they came for his family. He'd built his reputation on one simple truth: emotion is weakness, and weakness gets you killed. His subordinates had a saying: the boss doesn't feel, he calculates. At 42, Ju-chan had survived 3 assassination attempts, 2 federal investigations, and countless betrayals. He'd done it by following one sacred rule: never let anyone close enough to matter. But there was one rule even he couldn't break, one weakness his enemies didn't know about yet. The annual Lotus Foundation Gala, where Seoul's elite donate millions to look charitable, and men like Ju-chan donate millions to look legitimate. 500 guests, senators, CEOs, old money and new blood, all pretending not to notice the predators moving between the canapes. Ju-chan arrived at 8:47 p.m., 7 minutes late, calculated, a power move refined over decades. Behind him, his inner circle fanned out, 6 men in identical dark suits, scanning the crowd with practiced efficiency. They weren't worried about assassins tonight. The threat was more subtle. Boss needs to choose someone. That was Kang Min-ho, his oldest lieutenant, whispering to another guard. The families are watching. If he shows up alone again, they'll think he's weak, distracted. For the past 3 galas, exactly 40 models had been carefully positioned throughout the venue. Recruited, vetted, trained. Each one stunning, sophisticated, and connected to influential families who wanted closer ties to Ju-chan's organization. They wore designer gowns in jewel tones, sapphire, emerald, ruby, and they moved through the crowd like pieces on a chessboard, waiting for the king to make his selection. None of them knew they were auditioning, or maybe they did, and that was the point. But there was another woman in that ballroom, one who wasn't supposed to be part of the game at all. Dolores Magpante, 28, employed by the catering company for exactly 6 months. She worked the edges of the room where the light didn't quite reach, polishing champagne flutes and refilling water glasses with the kind of trained invisibility that comes from years of being overlooked. The other servers knew to give her space. Something about her discouraged small talk, the way she moved, efficient and self-contained. The way her eyes stayed down, never lingering on the guests' faces or their jewelry or their careless displays of wealth. An older server, Mrs. Kim, passed her near the service entrance, leaned in close. "Don't make eye contact with him," she whispered. "Girls who do disappear into that life." Dolores nodded without looking up. She'd heard the warnings. She'd seen what happened to pretty girls who caught the attention of powerful men. She had no intention of being seen at all. Ju-chan moved through the gala like a shark through deep water. Smooth, deliberate, apex. The models tracked his movement. A woman in emerald silk adjusted her posture as he passed. Another in midnight blue let her laughter ring out at precisely the right moment. They'd studied him, his patterns, his preferences, the rumors about what kind of woman he wanted. He saw none of them. His mind was 3 hours ahead, already at the midnight meeting with the Buson's syndicate, already calculating angles, leverage points, potential threats. The gala was theater. His presence was the performance, but his attention was elsewhere. Click, click, click. The sound of his handmade Italian shoes on marble echoed in the vast space. Around him, perfume thick enough to choke on. Laughter that had been practiced in mirrors. Smiles that cost what most people made in a year. Everything rehearsed, everything transactional, everything exactly as he expected. And then the pattern broke. Across the room, a champagne flute shattered against the marble floor. Crystal fragments scattered like frozen starlight. Dolores was already moving before the sound faded, dropping to one knee with a napkin in hand. Quick, professional, invisible. Ju Chan registered it peripherally. A servant cleaning up, nothing unusual, and kept moving. Then someone bumped into him. A drunk businessman, stumbling backward from the bar, knocked into Ju Chan's shoulder. Not hard, just enough to shift his trajectory by 30 centimeters. His guards moved instantly, hands going to concealed weapons. But Ju Chan raised one finger, stopped them. The businessman apologized profusely, bowing. Ju Chan dismissed him with a nod, already refocusing on his path across the room. Except now, his path took him past the broken glass. Past the woman kneeling there. Dolores looked up. Not intentionally, not flirtatiously. She looked up the way you do when someone's shadow falls across your hands, when you need to make sure you're not in the way. Their eyes met. 1, 2, 3. And she smiled. Not the practiced smile of the models. Not the fearful smile of someone who recognized danger. Not the calculating smile of someone who saw opportunity. She smiled like she knew him. Like she'd looked past the $10,000 suit and the reputation built on broken bones and buried secrets. Like she'd seen the thing he used to be 15 years ago, before he became the frozen king. Her smile said, "I see you, the real you, the one you killed." And in that smile, Ju Chan saw something he'd spent 15 years burying, something he thought he'd killed the night he became the frozen king. He saw his humanity. The room noticed. 40 models frozen mid-gesture, champagne glasses suspended halfway to painted lips. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the string quartet seemed to falter. Kim Ju Chan, the man who'd stared down prosecutors without blinking, was staring at a maid. Kang Minho materialized at his boss's elbow, voice low and urgent. "Sir, the chairman of Hanseong Group is waiting to speak with you, and the senator just arrived." Ju Chan didn't respond, didn't move. His hands, which had been steady through torture sessions and execution orders, trembled at his sides. For the first time in a decade, his heart was racing. He turned, walked toward the exit. His guards scrambled to follow, confused, alarmed. Whispers exploded behind him like shrapnel. The models exchanged glances, confusion, relief, calculation. One woman in ruby silk smiled, thinking she still had a chance. She didn't understand what had just happened. No one did. He'd made a choice, just not the one anyone expected. Dolores Magbinte stood in the service corridor, alone. The sounds of the gala filtered through the walls, muffled music, muffled laughter, muffled wealth. Out here, the walls were cinderblock painted institutional beige. The floor was scuffed linoleum. The air smelled like industrial detergent and old mop water. She leaned against the wall and slowly slid down until she was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. Her hands were shaking. "Stupid," she whispered to herself. "So stupid, Dolores, you know better." She'd spent 6 months perfecting the art of invisibility. 6 months keeping her head down, her eyes lowered, her presence minimal. She'd learned which parties to work, which guests to avoid, which corners of which rooms were safest. She knew the rules. And she'd just broken the most important one. She touched her left wrist, fingers finding the small scar hidden beneath her sleeve. A burn mark, old but permanent, shaped almost like a crescent moon. A reminder of another life, another mistake. She'd recognized something in his eyes, the same thing she saw in the mirror every morning. Ghosts. The kind that don't rest. The kind that follow you across oceans. The kind that make you do stupid things, like smile at the most dangerous man in Seoul. 3:17 a.m., Ju Chan's penthouse office, 37 floors above a city that never truly sleeps. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching rain streak down the glass like tears he'd forgotten how to cry. Behind him, Kang Min-ho shifted his weight from foot to foot, a nervous tell the lieutenant thought he'd hidden. He hadn't. Find her. 2 words, delivered in the same tone Ju-chan used to order executions. Kang stared at his boss's reflection in the window. Boss, this isn't like you. The Yamamoto deal closes in 72 hours. We need you focused. The Busan syndicate is already questioning whether. Find her. Kang Min-ho had worked for Ju-chan for 11 years. He'd seen his boss negotiate with Yakuza warlords, execute traitors without hesitation, survive a car bombing that killed 3 of his men. He'd never seen him rattled by a woman. He'd never seen him rattled at all. Until now. It took 18 hours. Ju-chan's intelligence network could find anyone in Seoul within a day. They'd located witnesses who disappeared into rural villages. They'd tracked offshore bank accounts through 7 shell companies. One Maid should have been simple. The file arrived at dawn. Dollars Magpante, 28 years old, Floridian national, work visa sponsored by Golden Star Catering Services. 3 jobs, hotel housekeeper morning shift, dry cleaning assistant afternoons, catering events evenings and weekends. Lived in a boarding house in Sillimdong, 1 room, shared bathroom down the hall, 40-minute commute by subway. Sent 70% of her earnings to Florida, to her mother, 3 younger siblings still in school. No criminal record, no debt, no romantic entanglements, no social media presence worth mentioning. The word his head of intelligence used, unremarkable. Ju-chan read the file 3 times, searching for what his men had missed. Because they had missed something, he knew it the way a shark knows blood in the water. Unremarkable people don't smile like they're holding the world's last secret. Unremarkable people don't look at the frozen king and see a man instead of a monster. Unremarkable people don't make his hands shake. Dolores woke at 5:15 every morning. She had 17 minutes to shower, dress, and catch the 5:47 subway to Gangnam. No breakfast. Coffee from a convenience store on her 15-minute break, if she had time. The hotel where she worked had 600 rooms. She was responsible for cleaning 22 of them before her shift ended at 1:00 p.m. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, efficient, invisible. She'd learned to predict where guests would leave their mess. Business travelers left papers scattered on desks, families left toys under beds, wealthy couples left champagne bottles and regret. She never judged, never lingered, never wondered about the lives lived in these temporary spaces. She just cleaned them and moved on. That was the first job. The dry cleaning shop was smaller, hotter. The owner, Mr. Park, was 73 and losing his sight. Dollars sorted garments, operated the press, managed the register. She had a 10-minute break at 4:30. She spent it in the storage room, sitting on an overturned crate, sketching in a battered notebook she'd bought for 2001 at a street market. She drew castles, impossible architecture that defied physics and gravity, towers that pierced clouds, bridges that connected mountains, gardens where trees grew upside down and rivers flowed through the sky. Worlds that didn't exist, could never exist. Worlds where maids didn't work 3 jobs, where mothers didn't get sick, where little brothers could finish school without their sisters sacrificing everything. Still dreaming of fairy tales, D. Maria, the other assistant, stood in the doorway. Floridian like Dollars, but 10 years older and harder around the edges. Dollars closed the notebook. Better than nightmares. Maria laughed, but there was no humor in it. Fairy tales are nightmares, honey, just with better marketing. Dolores returned to the press. Steam hissed. Fabric smoothed beneath her hands. The smell of chemical solvents burned her throat. She didn't mention that she'd felt eyes on her all day. Didn't mention the black sedan she'd seen 3 times, once outside the hotel, once near the subway station, once parked across from the dry cleaner. Didn't mention the prickling sensation at the back of her neck that said, "You're being hunted." She knew that feeling. She'd felt it before. In another country, another life. Before she learned to be unremarkable. Thursday, 11:43 a.m., the hotel's executive conference room on the 18th floor. Dolores was on her knees, wiping down baseboards, the kind of detail work most guests never noticed but management inspected religiously. She registered the sound but didn't look up. Hotel policy: if a guest enters while you're cleaning, make yourself smaller. Apologize, leave quickly. Footsteps, expensive shoes, moving closer. They stopped 3 meters away. She felt him before she saw him. The air changed, pressure, temperature like the moment before lightning strikes. "Sir, this room is reserved." She kept her eyes on the baseboard. Her voice was steady, professional, empty of anything that might be remembered. "I know, I reserved it." Her hands stopped moving. She knew that voice, low, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to raise itself to command a room. "Kim Ju-chan." Dolores stood slowly, gathering her cleaning supplies, still didn't look at him. "Then you know I'm still working." No one spoke to Ju-chan like that. His guards, positioned outside the door, tensed. One reached for his weapon reflexively. But Ju-chan raised his hand slightly, stopped them. He studied her. The way she moved, economical, precise, refusing to acknowledge his presence beyond the bare minimum of politeness. Most people couldn't meet his eyes. She wouldn't even grant him her attention. She walked past him, close enough that he caught her scent. Lavender, and something else. Something that reminded him of the library his grandmother kept in the house where he grew up, before everything burned. Old books, paper and ink and forgotten stories. Not perfume, not the cloying chemical sweetness every woman in his world wore like armor. Something real. She paused at the threshold, didn't look back. "The room is ready for your meeting, Mr. Kim." Then she was gone. Ju-chan stood in the empty conference room, surrounded by polished mahogany and leather chairs and the residual scent of lavender. His heart was racing again. No one walked away from Kim Ju-chan. But she just had. Twice. Reality has a way of demanding attention. While Ju-chan was arranging coincidental meetings with a maid, the H-Wang family was making a play for his territory in Itaewon. 3 of his clubs, 2 warehouses, 1 shipping route worth $40 million a year. The confrontation happened in an underground parking garage in Gangnam. 2 a.m. 7 men on each side. Negotiations that failed the moment someone drew a weapon. Ju-chan didn't draw first. He didn't need to. It was over in 47 seconds. 4 of H-Wang's men dead, 2 wounded, 1 ran. Ju-chan's side, 3 injured, none critical. And Ju-chan himself, standing in the center of the carnage with blood splattered across his white shirt and absolutely nothing in his eyes. The frozen king. Cold, efficient, merciless. Kang Min-ho watched his boss in the rearview mirror during the drive back to the penthouse. Ju-chan stared out the window at the passing city lights, his hands resting in his lap. Blood on his knuckles, blood on his cuffs. "You've been off since that gala," Kang said quietly. "Whatever this is, end it." Ju-chan didn't respond. The penthouse was dark, except for the city glow through the windows. Ju-chan went straight to the bathroom, stripped off his ruined shirt, turned on the water. Blood spiraled down the drain. He scrubbed his hands methodically, once, twice, 3 times. The water ran clear. He looked at himself in the mirror. Recognized what he saw there, the man he'd built, the weapon, the king. But behind his own reflection, he saw something else. A smile, knowing, impossible, real. "I see you." He dried his hands on a towel that cost more than most people made in a week. Made a decision. Set up another event, make sure she's working it. Private gallery opening, contemporary art exhibition, 60 guests maximum, Seoul's cultural elite pretending to understand paintings that looked like accidents. Dolers moved through the crowd with a tray of champagne flutes. Crystal, perfectly chilled. Bubbles rising like tiny prayers toward a god that didn't answer. She'd taken this shift specifically because it was small, intimate, lower risk. She didn't know Ju-chan owned the gallery. Didn't know he'd purchased it 3 days earlier for the sole purpose of creating this moment. She felt him before she saw him. That change in air pressure, that electrical charge, her body's warning system activating, ancient, primal, unavoidable. Dolers moved toward the service corridor. The hallway was narrow, utilitarian, white walls, fluorescent lights. The kind of space where the beautiful illusions maintained in the gallery fell away, revealing the machinery underneath. She set down her tray, took a breath, turned around. He was there, not blocking her path, not threatening, just there 5 meters away, waiting. Ju-chan had planned this conversation in his mind 17 different ways. He'd rehearsed approaches, calculated angles, prepared for every possible response. But standing there in that sterile hallway, under lights that showed every truth and hid nothing, all his plans evaporated. "Why did you smile at me?" Dolores studied him, really looked at him for the first time since the gala. His suit probably cost more than she'd make all year. His watch could pay for her youngest brother's entire education. His shoes were handmade Italian leather. But his eyes looked exhausted. "Why did you notice?" Her voice was soft, not challenging, genuinely curious. Ju-chan moved closer, 1 step, then another, stopped when he was 3 meters away. Close enough to talk, far enough to let her breathe. "Everyone notices me." Dolers tilted her head slightly, and for the first time since he'd begun this pursuit, she smiled. Not the smile from the gala, something smaller, sadder. "No, they notice your power, your money, your reputation, the fact that you could destroy their lives with a phone call." She paused. "I saw you." "And what did you see?" His voice was rougher now, less controlled. Dolers looked at him, really looked, the way she had at the gala, like she was reading a book written in a language only she understood. Someone tired of pretending. The words hit him like bullets. Precise, unavoidable, fatal in their accuracy. He opened his mouth, closed it, couldn't find language for what was happening in his chest, something cracking, something breaking, something he'd thought he'd killed 15 years ago trying to resurface. Dolores picked up her tray, walked toward the door, stopped with her hand on the handle, didn't turn around. "You should stop following me, Mr. Gim." Her voice was quiet, final. "Men like you destroy women like me. It's not personal, it's just the way the world works." She was gone. Ju-chan stood alone in the hallway, under fluorescent lights that showed everything and forgave nothing. His hands were shaking again. And for the first time in 15 years, the frozen king felt something he'd forgotten existed. Fear. Not of bullets or betrayal or the consequences of his choices. Fear that she was right. 72 hours. Ju-chan told himself he could last 72 hours without thinking about her. He was wrong. Day 1, the Yamamoto deal. $300 million in semiconductor imports that needed his signature and his attention. He read the same paragraph of the contract 11 times. All he saw were the words, someone tired of pretending. Kang Min-ho presented security reports, territory updates, intelligence on the H-Wang family's next move. Ju-chan nodded at the right moments, said the right things. But his mind was in a service corridor under fluorescent lights, watching a woman walk away. Day 2, meetings with his captains. 7 different operations requiring decisions only he could make. He made them all. Every single one was sound, strategic, perfectly calculated. And he felt nothing, nothing except the absence of something he couldn't name. Day 3, he fired his personal assistant for bringing the wrong coffee. He'd never cared about coffee before. That night, alone in his penthouse, he threw a tumbler of whiskey against the wall. Watched it shatter, watched amber liquid run down imported wallpaper. Felt absolutely nothing. And that was when he knew. The thing he'd been running from wasn't catching up. It was already inside him. 15 years ago, Kim Joo-chan was a different man. Not softer, not weaker, just different. 27 years old, rising through the ranks of his uncle's organization. Smart, ruthless, ambitious. And in love. Her name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that she smiled at him the way normal people smile, with joy, with ease, with absolutely no understanding of what his world demanded. She worked at a bookstore in Hongdae, read poetry, believed people were fundamentally good. She made him believe it too. For 6 months, he pretended he could have both, the life he was building and the life he wanted. For 6 months, he was wrong. The Choi family sent a message. They killed her outside her bookstore on a Tuesday afternoon. 3 bullets, professional, clean. The message, weakness gets punished. Joo-chan received that message. He spent the next 2 years delivering his response. The Choi family doesn't exist anymore. Not the leadership, not the soldiers, not even the name. Joo-chan erased them so thoroughly that people in Seoul's underworld still whisper about it in the kind of voices reserved for ghost stories. And when it was over, when every man who'd touched that trigger was in the ground, Joo-chan looked at himself in the mirror. Saw what he'd become. Made a promise. Never again. Never feel, never care, never let anyone close enough to matter. Freeze everything that could be used against you. Become winter. For 15 years, that promise held. But Dolar's words kept echoing in his mind. Someone tired of pretending. And he realized he'd been pretending for so long, he'd forgotten it was a performance. Forgotten there was anything underneath. Until her smile reminded him. 2:47 a.m. Joo-chan stood across the street from a rundown building in Sillim-dong. Rain soaked through his coat. His driver waited in the car, confused and concerned. 4th floor, window 3 from the left, her window. The light was off. He didn't know what he was doing there. Didn't know what he'd say if she appeared. Didn't know anything except that his chest ached with something worse than bullet wounds. Something that felt like hope. And hope, in his world, was a death sentence. He left without knocking. Went home, took a shower, went through the motions of being the frozen king. But something had cracked. And cracks, once started, only spread. Dolores sat on her narrow bed in her narrow room, sketching by the light of a single lamp. The building's walls were thin enough to hear neighbors arguing. The radiator clanked but never quite produced heat. The window didn't seal properly, letting in drafts that smelled like exhaust and old kimchi. But it was hers, safe, invisible. Everything she needed. Everything she'd fought for. Tonight she was drawing a bridge. Not a normal bridge. This one arched over nothing. No river, no canyon, no ground at all. It simply hung in space, connecting 2 points that existed in different realities. On one side, a city made of light. On the other, darkness so complete it absorbed everything. And in the middle of the bridge, a single figure, frozen mid-step, unable to choose. She'd drawn this bridge before. In Florida, when she was 19 and the choice was simpler. Her sister's face filled the screen. Anna, 16, still in her school uniform even though it was late evening there. 8, finally, you never answer anymore. Dolar smiled, the same smile she used at work, practiced, empty, protective. Sorry, Mahal, I've been working a lot. When are you coming home? The question Dolars had been avoiding for 6 months. I can't, not yet, maybe never. Anna's face fell. She was young enough to still show disappointment openly, old enough to understand what the answer meant. It's been 3 years, 8. Mama asks about you every day. And Theo, he's graduating next year, he wants you there. Dolar's throat tightened. I know, I want to be there too, but the money. We don't need the money more than we need you. That was a lie, and they both knew it. Their mother's medication cost $20,000 a month. Theo's school fees, Anna's school fees, the roof that leaked, the debt their father left when he died. Dolar's sent home everything she could spare. It was never enough. She set down the phone, touched the scar on her left wrist without thinking, a habit born from 3 years of stress, 3 years of carrying weight she couldn't put down. The scar was small, crescent-shaped, a burn from the edge of a cooking pot. That was the official story. The truth was more complicated. Florida, 3 years ago. Dolar's had a different job then, secretary at a law firm, good pay, respectable, her family was proud. Her boss was a senior partner, 53, married, powerful, and interested. She said no the first time. Politely, professionally, hoping that would be enough. It wasn't. The second time, he didn't ask. The office was empty, late Friday evening. Everyone else had gone home. He cornered her in the filing room. She fought. The burn on her wrist came from the cigarette he used to teach her a lesson about disrespect. She escaped, reported him. Learned very quickly that powerful men don't face consequences. Women who challenge them do. Within a week, she was fired for performance issues. Within a month, every law firm in Florida had mysteriously decided she wasn't qualified for any position. Within 2 months, she couldn't find work anywhere. Her boss had connections, influence, power, and he used it to erase her professionally, to punish her for saying no. So Dolar's disappeared. Changed countries, changed careers, changed everything except the scar on her wrist and the lesson burned into her skin. Powerful men destroy women like her. It's not personal. It's just the way the world works. Now she sat in Seoul, 3,000 kilometers from home, working 3 jobs to send money to a family she might never see again. Drawing bridges to impossible places. Staying invisible. Staying safe. Until a man in an expensive suit looked at her like she was more than furniture. And she'd been stupid enough to smile back. Her phone buzzed. The building's cheap security system sent alerts to residents when cars lingered too long outside. Dolar's checked the grainy footage. Black sedan, expensive, idling across the street. She couldn't see the license plate, couldn't see inside. Didn't need to. She knew. Dolores had never been to Ju Chan's office building. 63 floors of glass and steel in the heart of Gangnam. His company, a legitimate front for illegitimate business, occupied the top 12 floors. Security stopped her in the lobby. She wore her cleanest dress, cheap fabric that tried to look expensive, hair pulled back, no makeup. Still looked like what she was, a woman who didn't belong. Ma'am, you can't. Tell him the maid is here. The guard blinked, confused, reached for his radio. Sir, there's a woman here who says. Whatever response came through his earpiece made his eyes widen. He stepped aside. 63 floors. Dolar's watched the numbers climb, her reflection fragmented in the elevator's mirrored walls. Counted her breaths, tried to steady her hands. This was insane. She was walking into the domain of the most dangerous man in Seoul to tell him to leave her alone. The elevator doors opened. Ju Chan's personal floor was silent. Thick carpet absorbed sound. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Everything was chrome and leather and the kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouted. His assistant, a woman in her 40s with a face trained to show nothing, gestured toward massive double doors. He's expecting you. Ju Chan stood at the windows, backlit by the city. He didn't turn when she entered. You came. His voice was different from the hallway, rougher, less controlled. Dolar's closed the doors behind her, stayed near them. Escape route. Stop whatever this is. Now he turned. He looked terrible, which for a man like Ju Chan meant almost human. Tie loose, shirt wrinkled, shadows under his eyes that suggested he'd slept as little as she had. I can't. 2 words, honest, devastating. You don't even know me. Dolar's voice was steady, but her hands trembled at her sides. Ju Chan moved closer, 3 steps, stopped. That careful distance he maintained, close enough to talk, far enough to let her breathe. I know you see me, the real me, and I haven't been seen in 15 years. I know you work 3 jobs and send money home to Florida. I know you draw impossible architecture in a notebook during your breaks. I know you smell like lavender instead of perfume. I know you're running from something because I recognize the look in your eyes, the same look I see in the mirror. His voice dropped lower. And I know that when you smiled at me at that gala, something in my chest that's been dead for 15 years woke up, and it's terrifying, and I can't make it stop. Dolores stared at him. This man who could order deaths with a phone call, who built an empire on violence and fear, who she should be running from. This man who looked at her like she was oxygen. Ju Chan's phone erupted. He ignored it. It rang again. His office phone joined in. Kang Min-ho appeared, out of breath, weapon visible under his jacket. Boss, ambush, Highway 46. They hit 3 of our vehicles. We need to move now. The Frozen King returned in an instant. Ju Chan's entire demeanor shifted, shoulders back, face empty, eyes cold. He moved toward the door, already issuing orders in rapid Korean. Stopped at the threshold, looked back at Dolars. Stay here, you'll be safe. Her response came quietly, but firm. I don't need your protection, Mr. Kim. I need you to let me go. But when the door closed behind him, she didn't leave. She stood in his office, surrounded by leather and chrome and floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking a city that didn't care if she lived or died. And they both knew what that meant. The H. Wang family had been planning this for weeks. 3-vehicle convoy, Highway 46, kilometer marker 37, 11:42 p.m. Classic ambush point, overpass above, embankment below, limited escape routes. Ju Chan's convoy never had a chance. The lead vehicle took an RPG to the engine block. The rear vehicle crashed into the median barrier at 80 kilometers per hour. Ju Chan's car, the middle vehicle, was boxed in. He had 14 seconds before the shooters opened fire. He used them efficiently. 5 minutes of chaos. Kang Min-ho took a bullet to the shoulder, still fighting. 2 of Ju Chan's guards went down. 1 wouldn't get up again. Ju Chan himself moved through the violence with the efficiency of a man who'd done this 100 times before. Precise, calculated, empty. When it ended, 7 bodies littered the highway. None of them were Ju Chan's. But he'd taken shrapnel to his left side, grazing wound across his ribs, not life-threatening but real. Blood soaking through his shirt. Pain he barely registered. He refused the hospital. Ordered his driver back to the office. Dawn was breaking over Seoul when they arrived. Ju Chan pushed through his office doors, leaving bloody handprints on imported chrome. Stopped. Dolars was asleep in his chair. Her head rested on her arms on his desk. Her notebook lay open beside her, pages filled with sketches and words in her neat handwriting. He moved closer, silent despite his injuries. Looked down at the open page. A story, handwritten, titled, The King Who Forgot How to Be Human. He read, Once there was a king who ruled a kingdom made of winter. Everything he touched turned to ice, his enemies, his friends, his own heart. He thought this made him strong, thought this made him safe, until one day he met someone who didn't freeze, and he realized he wasn't strong. He was just alone, and there's a difference. Dolores woke. Saw him standing there, blood-soaked and swaying slightly. Her eyes went wide. No screaming, no panic. Just immediate action. She found his private bathroom, grabbed towels, wet one in the sink. returned to find him sitting heavily on the leather couch, finally acknowledging the pain. She knelt beside him, started unbuttoning his ruined shirt with steady hands. Not romantic, not sexual. Practical, human kindness in its purest form. The wound wasn't as bad as it looked. Shrapnel had torn through the flesh along his ribs, but hadn't penetrated deep. She cleaned it carefully, her touch gentle but efficient. Neither of them spoke. When she reached his face, a cut along his cheekbone from flying glass, their eyes met. "This life will kill you." Her voice was soft, certain. Ju Chan looked at her, this woman who'd stayed when she should have run, who was cleaning his wounds with hands that trembled slightly, who saw him, really saw him. It already did, a long time ago. Dolores paused, the wet towel still pressed to his face. Understanding passed between them. Two people running from different ghosts. Two people who'd learned to be invisible for different reasons. Two people who'd forgotten how to be human until they saw each other. She resumed cleaning the cut. He let her. And outside the windows, Seoul woke to another day. Indifferent to the violence of the night before. Indifferent to the two people in a blood-stained office, discovering that the thing they'd been running from was the same thing they'd been running toward. Each other. The sun rose over Seoul, painting Ju Chan's office windows gold. Neither of them had moved in 20 minutes. Dolores sat on the couch beside him, blood-stained towels at her feet. Ju Chan leaned back, eyes closed, his cleaned wounds stark against pale skin. Exhaustion had stripped away their armor. He spoke without opening his eyes. "I want to give you a choice I was never given." Dolores turned to look at him. "What choice?" Ju Chan opened his eyes, stared at the ceiling. "A way out, money enough to start over anywhere in the world. Protection, documentation, connections, everything you'd need. You could go back to Florida, take care of your family properly, or go somewhere completely new. Australia, Canada, anywhere." He finally looked at her. "The catch is simple. I never contact you again. You disappear from my world and I let you go." Dolores' expression didn't change. "Why?" Ju Chan sat up slowly, wincing. "Because you deserve to keep dreaming, and I destroy dreams. It's what I do, what I'm built for." He gestured at his office, the city beyond. "Everyone who gets close to me ends up contaminated, changed, ruined. It's not intention, it's just gravity. I pull people into my orbit and they burn up. You're different, you're still clean, still capable of drawing bridges to impossible places, and I won't be the one who takes that from you." Dolores stood abruptly, paced to the windows, stared out at the city, arms crossed. When she spoke, her voice was sharp. "Cold. You don't get to decide what I can handle." Ju Chan blinked, surprised. "I'm trying to." "You're trying to make yourself feel better." She turned, her eyes blazed. "You think you're protecting me? You're protecting yourself. From the possibility that I might choose to stay. From the responsibility of what that would mean. From having to actually feel something. You want to package me up with money and documentation and send me away so you can go back to being the frozen king without guilt. So you can tell yourself you did the noble thing." She moved closer. "Don't dress up cowardice as sacrifice, Mr. Kim." Ju Chan stood slowly, faced her. For a moment, his face showed nothing, the mask he'd perfected over 15 years. Then it cracked. "Maybe you're right." His voice was raw. "Maybe I am a coward. Maybe I've spent 15 years building walls so high I've forgotten what it's like to stand in the open. Maybe I'm terrified that if I let you in, I'll lose you the way I lost her. And I can't." His hands trembled. "I can't survive that again." Dolores studied him, the exhaustion, the blood, the man underneath the reputation. "So what do you want, Mr. Kim? Not what you think you should want, not what's safe or strategic or noble. What do you want?" The question hung between them like a blade. Ju Chan moved to his desk, leaned against it, looked at his hands, The same hands that had killed, built empires, destroyed rivals. Her name was Jaiwan. Dollars went still. We met when I was 27, before all this, before I became this. She worked at a bookstore, read poetry to children on Saturday afternoons, believed the world was basically good. His voice dropped. She made me believe it too. For 6 months, I thought I could have both, the life I was building in my uncle's organization and the life I wanted with her. I thought I was smart enough, strong enough, careful enough. I was wrong. They killed her to send a message. 3 bullets outside her bookstore on a Tuesday afternoon. Professional, clean, effective. And I learned, emotion is weakness. Love is a weapon your enemies will use. The only way to survive is to feel nothing, to become winter, to freeze everything that could be taken away. He looked up at Dollars. I built this empire on ice. One crack and it all floods. And you're an earthquake. Dolores walked to the windows, pressed her palm against the glass. I'm not your salvation. Her voice was quiet, firm. I'm running too, from expectations, from a life that was chosen for me, from people who love a version of me that doesn't exist. She turned to face him. My family thinks I'm in Korea building a better life, saving money for their future, being the dutiful daughter who sacrifices everything. They don't know I'm here because I couldn't breathe there anymore, because a powerful man decided I was his to take, and when I said no, he made sure I'd never work again, because the world decided what I was worth, and it wasn't much. Her hand went to the scar on her wrist. So I became invisible, changed countries, changed everything, started over as the thing everyone overlooks, a maid, a cleaner, the help, no expectations, no demands, no one looking too closely. We're both hiding, just in different ways. You built walls of ice. I disappeared into shadows. Neither of us are free. Understanding passed between them. 2 broken people, 2 different prisons, same fear. Ju Chan moved closer, stopped an arm's length away. That smile at the gala, he said slowly. I need to understand, was it? It wasn't for you. Dollars' voice was soft but certain. It was for me, a reminder that I still could, that after 3 years of being invisible, I was still human under the uniform, still capable of seeing another person and connecting, even for a second. I saw someone who looked as tired of pretending as I felt, and I smiled because, I don't know, because misery recognizes misery, because for one moment I forgot to be invisible. She laughed quietly. I should have known better. Women like me don't smile at men like you. We keep our heads down and survive. But I forgot, and here we are. Ju Chan reached out slowly. Took her hand. Not possessive, not romantic. Just contact, human to human. Here we are, he repeated. And for the first time since the gala, Dollars didn't pull away. Reality has terrible timing. Ju Chan's phone erupted on his desk, multiple notifications, urgent. He released Dollars' hand, checked the screen. His face went blank. What is it? He didn't answer immediately. Read through messages, his expression darkening with each one. The families, they've called an emergency council meeting, tonight. About me. Dolores understood before he said it. In organizations like Ju Chan's, distraction was weakness. Weakness invited challenges. Challenges led to blood. They're demanding answers about your situation. Their word, not mine. He met her eyes. An ultimatum. Handle the Maid situation or they will. The temperature in the room dropped. Dolores had heard those words before. Different country, different powerful men, same threat. Handle the situation. Translation, make the problem disappear. She moved toward the door. See, this is why people like us don't get fairy tales. Then we write a new story. Ju Chan's voice stopped her. She didn't turn around. Stories don't stop bullets. No, but they give us a reason to dodge them. Dolores turned. Ju Chan stood in the center of his blood-stained office, looking less like a crime lord and more like a man who'd finally decided to stop running. "I'm tired," he said quietly. "Tired of being frozen. Tired of pretending I'm not human. Tired of letting fear make my choices." He moved closer. "The families want an answer. I'll give them one. But first I need to know, what do you want? Not what's safe, not what's smart. What do you want, Dolers?" The question hung in the air between them. On one side, safety, invisibility, survival, everything she'd built over 3 years, the life she knew how to live. On the other, uncertainty, danger, stepping into light so bright it might burn, risking everything for something that might not even work. 2 impossible choices. 2 people standing at the edge. Dolers thought about her sketches, bridges connecting impossible places, castles in the sky, worlds that couldn't exist. Thought about her sister's question, "When are you coming home?" Thought about the truth she'd never admitted. She didn't know where home was anymore. Thought about a smile she'd given without thinking. And the earthquake that followed. She looked at Ju Chan. This man who could destroy her with a phone call. Who probably would destroy her, eventually, because that's what powerful men did. This man who looked at her like she was oxygen. Who'd offered her freedom instead of a cage. Who was tired of pretending. Just like her. "I want to try." Her voice shook, but the words were clear. "I want to stop hiding. Stop being invisible. Stop letting fear decide who I'm allowed to be. I want to smile without apologizing for it. I want to draw my castles where people can see them. I want to go home and tell my sister the truth instead of pretty lies." She stepped closer. "And I want this, whatever this is, even if it's dangerous, even if it doesn't work, even if we both end up regretting it. I'm tired of safe, Mr. Kim. Safe is just another word for alone." Ju Chan closed the distance between them. Took both her hands in his. They were both trembling. Ju Chan made the call at 9:47 a.m. Conference line, all 7 family heads, his inner circle, 43 people total listening. Dolers stood beside him, visible, present. A declaration. "Gentlemen, you've requested clarification on my recent distraction." His voice was steel wrapped in ice. "I'm calling to provide it. Dolers Magbante is under my personal protection, effective immediately. Anyone who threatens her, approaches her, or interferes with her in any way will answer to me directly. This is not a negotiation. This is not a discussion. This is a fact. Challenge it and you challenge me." Silence on the line. Then, "Boss, the families won't accept." "The families," Ju Chan interrupted, "will accept what I tell them to accept, or they're welcome to find new leadership. I'm sure the H-Wang remnants would be interested in their territories." The threat was clear, direct, unmistakable. More silence. Then, grudgingly, "Understood, boss." One by one, the families acknowledged, some with anger, some with confusion, all with compliance. Because this was the frozen king. And he'd just declared war for a maid. Ju Chan set down the phone. Looked at Dolers. Her hands were still in his, still trembling. "That's it," she whispered. "They just accept. For now, they'll test it, push boundaries, try to find leverage. This isn't over. It might never be over. This life doesn't do happy endings well." Dolers nodded slowly. "I know. So why are we doing this?" Ju Chan smiled, actually smiled, something his face had forgotten how to do. "Because for the first time in 15 years, I feel something more dangerous than fear." Hope. They both knew this wouldn't be easy. It might not even work. The families would push back. Old enemies would see opportunity. New threats would emerge. Dolers would face judgment. From her family, from her community, from a world that had very clear ideas about maids who got involved with crime lords. Ju Chan would face challenges to his authority, questions about his judgment, tests of his resolve. Neither path was safe. Both paths led through fire. But they'd made their choice. Not perfect, not safe. Just real. 6 months later, the same ballroom where it started, the same annual Lotus Foundation Gala, the same marble floors and crystal chandeliers and souls, elite pretending to be charitable. But everything was different. 40 models still positioned throughout the room, still beautiful, still strategic, still waiting for the frozen king to notice them. Ju Chan entered at 8:47 p.m. 7 minutes late, always. His guards fanned out, the room held its breath. But this time, his eyes didn't scan the crowd with detached calculation. This time, he walked directly toward a woman standing near the windows. She wasn't in a white apron anymore. Dollars wore a simple dress, not designer, not trying to compete with the wealth around her. Just herself, visible. She held a champagne glass she hadn't sipped from, looking out at the city lights. Ju Chan stopped beside her. "You came. You asked." She turned, smiled. The same smile from 6 months ago, but different now. Not a secret, a promise. Around them, the room buzzed with whispers, confusion, scandal, judgment. Neither of them noticed. Dolores still worked, her choice. 2 jobs now instead of 3, she'd kept the hotel, quit the others. But 3 afternoons a week, she sketched in a small studio Ju Chan had helped her rent, drew her impossible architecture, started selling pieces to a gallery in Hongdae. She'd gone home to Florida for 2 weeks, told her family the truth. Not all of it, some stories are too complicated for phone calls, but enough. Her mother cried. Her sister asked 1,000 questions. Her brother just hugged her and said, "You seem different, happy." She was, sometimes, when she wasn't terrified. Ju Chan still ran his empire. Still made hard decisions. Still walked through violence when necessary. Still was the frozen king to everyone who mattered. Except now, there was a crack in the ice. One person who saw the man underneath. One person he let in. One person who reminded him that power wasn't the same as strength. The families had tested him, of course, twice. Both tests ended badly for the testers. Word spread, the boss's maid was untouchable. Eventually, they stopped testing. Now, in the ballroom where they'd first seen each other, Ju Chan extended his hand. "Dance with me." Dollars set down her champagne glass. Took his hand. Let him lead her onto the floor as the string quartet began a waltz. The room went silent. The frozen king, dancing with a maid. Impossible, scandalous, real. As they moved across the floor, Dollars whispered, "They're all starring." "I know. Does it bother you?" Ju Chan pulled her slightly closer. "No, for the first time in my life, I understand something." "What's that?" He met her eyes. Power isn't control. It's choosing who gets to see you break. The music played. They danced. And for one perfect moment in an imperfect world, a crime lord and a maid existed in the space between impossible and real. Where all the best stories live. But every story has chapters the world doesn't see. Secrets that wait in shadows. Truths that change everything. 3 days after the gala, Ju Chan's intelligence chief delivered a file. Background check, routine follow-up, nothing concerning. Except for one detail, buried on page 17. Dollars Magpante had entered Korea on a work visa 6 months ago. But she'd been in the country for 3 years. Under a different name. Working for a different organization. An organization Ju Chan had destroyed 2 years ago in a territorial war. The question wasn't whether Dollars had secrets. Everyone had secrets. The question was, who was she before she became invisible? And why did her smile feel so familiar to a man who'd spent 15 years forgetting? Want to know what happened when the families discovered Dollars' real secret? Part 2 reveals why she was really in Korea, and the choice that will force Ju Chan to choose between his empire and his humanity. The truth changes everything. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share this video, and subscribe for more stories that speak to the heart. Where in the world are you turning in from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. I appreciate the time you spent here with me today.